My name is Paul Slack. It's Good News Broadcast. I'm speaking to Stephen Perry, who's the president and CEO of the New Orleans Convention and Visitors Bureau. Thanks for doing that job, because you're a lucky guy.
Let me tell you what, people ask me if after the things we went through the last 5 years, if it was difficult, and my response is there is nothing better in the world than waking up every morning to work on behalf of a place where I get to live and millions of people want to go. And so it's a terrific, just a terrific city.
Well, I've been a fortunate one because I've been going down there for years. The TV industry, the NAPTI TV conferences were always held down there, and I've been down there socially. I'm a jazz guy, and there's so much to do and a friendly atmosphere to do it in. So tell us how things.
Right. Hey, and you know what, Paul? We won two more Grammys in the jazz area this year with both Terrence Blanchard and Irvin Mayfield. So
there you go.
Another good year for New Orleans music.
Well, we've done a few the stories recently, on New Orleans. In fact, we just interviewed Wendell Pierce. He was on the HBO show.
Oh yeah.
And a real New Orleans guy, and. We did I guess probably one of the first Katrina outreaches some years ago on a pier on 26th Street, and we're very involved with the subject of water. Yeah. So we were able to help out a little bit. And so tell us how things are there now. I know there's been, the Gulf has had some difficulties, as we all know, and how's that affected New Orleans?
Well, the issue in the Gulf was more of an emotional issue. It didn't really affect New Orleans at all, or even affect our visitor traffic. What it did was it kind of tore our hearts apart again. Just looking at the damage to the environment and those incredible pristine marshes, but it has been, despite that, just an extraordinary year for us because. We've had our biggest year in 5 years, and New Orleans this year has been the second fastest growing tourism market of the top 25 destinations in the United States, trailing only, believe it or not, New York City.
Where's that?
So it has just been an amazing year. In fact, we sold out 90% of our weekends the first 6 months of the year. So it's and part of the reason I think, Paul, is the explosion of even new restaurants. I mean, we're world famous for food, obviously, and since Katrina, we actually have 27% more restaurants open now than we did then. So it's been, for all of those of us that love food and eating out, that has been kind of special.
I have a book here, Paul Prudhomme signed. He signed for me many years ago, and we were talking Cajun Talk. And we've done a lot of shows on the cooking in the New Orleans area. Tell us about how many rooms you have for conventions down there.
Well, we have 35,000 rooms, and we're one of the few cities in the country we have 22,000 rooms, quality rooms, within a 14-minute walk of the convention center, which is extraordinary, and that's really because we're a small city. And most of the hotel development is down in the Warehouse and Arts District and in the French Quarter, all adjacent right near the convention center, and that makes this a popular place for holding conventions because the proximity is so near. And then when you walk out at night, you're not having to take a 45-minute cab ride. You're right there at any number of restaurants or clubs, and I think it makes it a special place to hold meetings.
Sure, and there's you got music in the streets.
And it really is. People laugh at that. Music breaks out here all the time because it's in the culture. In fact, we often laugh. When a young boy grows up in New Orleans, he's got one of two options. He's either got to learn to play an instrument, or he has to learn to cook. And a lot of the guys end up doing both. But it's sort of like we always say down here that. When you compare it to Europe, and we're kind of a European sort of city in a lot of ways, with the architecture and the culture, but in Europe, over the centuries, culture has kind of come down from above, from the monarchs and the dukes and the papacy and the church, and it's been funded by them. Here, culture kind of bubbles up from the streets, and it's got this incredible mix of African and Caribbean and French and Spanish, and it really makes it an amazing place to live.
So I had some Creole last night. Actually, I did a show with Olivia Manning.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. They got these football.
Sure, I know Olivia and Archie real well.
Yeah, they football players of some sort. The Mannings.
Some sort.
Yeah, and so we did it for Zatarian. And boy, I'm crazy about those spices.
There's just, I tell people that when you come down here, your molecules rearrange a little bit because you're going to kind of unzip your outer skin and you're going to feel different because you're going to eat different things and you're going to hear different sounds and it does. That's the whole point of travel after all.
Mm-hmm.
It's why so many people like going to New York because it's not just one place.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of different places.
Sure.
With all the great cultural mix, and I think that's the beauty of a New York City and a San Francisco and a New Orleans is that they have this indigenous culture that's very multicultural, and they have a little bit of a gritty element. It's not all gentrified and perfect. It's like real life when you come to our place.
Well, some people say that some of the local residents sound like they're from Brooklyn.
Well, there is an accent here that exactly sounds like a Brooklyn accent,
I know.
and there's one that's a little bit like the Bronx. So it's really it actually cracks up people from New York when they're down here visiting.
How did they? First of all, congratulations. Now, I think I just heard it a couple of days ago that I don't know if they're levies or the way that the country has banded together to help to provide to make sure that we don't have that kind of a flood situation in New Orleans. Isn't that how's that? Supposedly it's done. Do I have that right?
90% of it is done. I mean, there is, for those of us who, the odd thing is, for all of my life and for most of the past century, New Orleanians would miss less work due to hurricanes than you would up north with snow days. And
Really?
What happened with this one was it wasn't the fact that the hurricane came through, it was the fact that they had the misengineered levees and the faulty construction, and when those got repaired now, all of the low, because we've actually had 2 hurricanes since Katrina that have come straight through, and all the levee work did its trick. And though we're going to continue to make some improvements, I mean, people have rebuilt, and especially those that are living. In fact, I drove yesterday. I went out to a place to eat some fried oysters out on the lake, and I went right by where the levee break was that was so famous at the 17th Street Canal, and people have rebuilt their homes there, and it just it's given a great confidence boost to the city.
Stephen, what do you mean lake? Where's there a lake?
Lake Pontchartrain, one of the most beautiful biggest lakes in the country outside of the Great Lakes. So, we've got that right adjacent to the city, and but it was the canal walls that broke. It wasn't overtopping at the lake. It was the canal walls that flooded at that point 80% of the city, which was kind of staggering to the imagination. That's why we're so excited to be back where we are right now. We got Super Bowl coming and Final Four and BCS National College Football Championship and a lot of big things on track. And better than just about anybody, New Orleans it doesn't hardly need an excuse to put on a party, does it? We'll always make one.
Well, it's Southern hospitality. You got it to the.
Well, I think
extreme.
it's in our genes. Really, and we developed such a close tie with New York City in particular because after 9/11, there was a group of New Orleanians and people from South Louisiana who actually drove up. And they were called the Gumbo Patrol, and they made jambalaya and red beans and rice and gumbo and all of this for all the first responders in these big cauldrons out on the street, and they became very popular with police and fire departments in New York. And that's sort of a New Orleans way of. Normally, the reaction you hear is if something goes wrong somewhere else, people's first thought is, we need to go cook for those people.
That's very, very true. I knew about that as well. And in fact, the guy who's won the shucking contest over here in the Oyster Bar in Grand Central, he was a New Orleans guy.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
That doesn't surprise me a bit.
it's all good. I'd like to have. I've told a lot of people that even since Katrina, that it didn't hit like the Preservation Hall as well, right?
Oh no, the French Quarter. Well, see, the original French and Spanish city of New Orleans was built right along the river, and the high ground in the city is the oldest parts of the city. The French Quarter, the Arts District, the whole stretch that goes all the way uptown to the Audubon Zoo. Those were the areas that were not damaged by the water, and that I think is frankly what saved New Orleans. As devastating as it was to some of the outlying neighborhoods that developed around World War II and thereafter, it did not affect those 300-year-old buildings in the original city, and that made all the difference in the world.
And the hurricane didn't hurt. I mean, the drink.
No,
the
it
hurricane.
really didn't. You would be, we were surprised that, frankly, all the architecture, it all held up beautifully.
I also sent some people out on it, and tell me, is that still? Because I didn't go, and I'm actually saddened, and I will come down there soon and go. But on the Delta Queen.
Oh yeah,
still coming out of New Orleans.
Yeah, and there are two steamships here. There's one, the Delta Queen had so much history, and there are things that we're working on right now to help get that schedule back like it was. You've still got the Natchez and two other boats operating, which are gorgeous. The cruise ships, oddly enough, have all come back to New Orleans, and it's become now one of the nation's 2 or 3 most popular cruise ports to take off and go out into the Gulf of Mexico and go to Cozumel and Cancun and Jamaica as well. But those almost, when you hear the calafis off the steamboats, it sort of feels like you're back in time a little bit.
Yeah, it's all beautiful. You still have a jazz festival down there?
Yeah, it only draws about 500,000 people.
When is that exactly?
It is every year the same time. It's
right.
The last weekend of April and the first weekend of May.
Okay.
And you wouldn't believe how many people around the world and especially from New York, which is our biggest domestic market. They love coming because it's sort of a 2-week celebration of food, music, culture. And when you go out there and you think that at any moment you could be hearing on one end of the place a Tony Bennett or a Dave Matthews band, and then be hearing a Wynton Marsalis, and then a gospel choir, and a Buddy Guy playing blues, or a B.B. King. And you walk around and you've got 8 stages going simultaneously, and you've got these food booths, which I know you've been to, that from everything from crawfish pies to alligator on a stick to you name it, it's you really can't do it anywhere else.
I think there's somebody called the Neville Brothers. You hear that group?
They are the traditional closers for Jazz Fest. And when let me tell you, when you hear Aaron's voice, it's just it just kind of melts you inside.
I hear you. Harry Connick wasn't a bad singer as well.
Yeah, Harry Connick, and and he's done so much on helping develop that Musicians Village. He and Brad Pitt. Brad's been here all week doing a lot of work with Katrina with his project, and we're like any big city. We have a ways to go on things in certain neighborhoods, but the truth is, the progress we've made and the advances are pretty amazing. And last week we got a federal grant from FEMA because of all the damaged schools. We're going to now be able to rebuild every school in New Orleans.
Wow!
Almost $2 billion, and that is going to make a difference for kids that, God, I just can't even describe, because it's right at about $1.8 billion, and it's going to mean state-of-the-art new schools for these kids who've been having to make do with so much damage to those schools in the storm, and this is I think has got all of them just lit up with big smiles that they'll be able to go to the kind of schoolrooms and that you would want your child to go to.
You have a wonderful website as well that people can go to right now. What is that?
NewOrleansInfo.com.
Okay, fantastic.
Easy to remember. And Paul, we appreciate you and everyone in New York's love of this amazing city, and we can't wait to see you soon, and we'll have some beignets ready for you too.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
I'll be there later for tomorrow morning. All right, Stephen. Thank you very much.
Take care,
Always
Paul.
a pleasure. Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye.